Maybe this drastically inconsistent team is exactly who the 2023 Mets are. Now, that's the title to New York Post baseball columnist and MLB Network insider Joel Sherman's article on the Post website. Go check it out after this interview because we got Joel on the line to talk about this drastically inconsistent team and your article. Joel, thanks for hopping on with us. Let's get right into it. This team swept the Phillies only to get swept by the Blue Jays. They've been inconsistent, and they're now sitting at 500. So I'm going to ask you, is this team better than their record? And what's caused this average start to the season?
Yeah, it's one step forward, one Met back, right? They look like they were flying after the Phillies, a couple of late wins. They're starting pitching in order, and then they lost 3 to the Blue Jays, who entered with the same record, 30-27 as them. They left 33-27. The Mets left 30-30. It's 60 games. It's 500. Look, I think there's not a singular reason why they're in this situation, but I'll give you one I'll try to do it as quick as possible. Baseball is a democratic game. The guy who hits ninth hits nearly as often as the guy who hits third. The number 4 and 5 starter is going to start nearly as often as the number 1 and 2. The way bullpens are used these days, 3 or 4 guys a day, there's no such thing as a mop-up guy anymore. Every one of your relief pitchers is going to pitch in leverage probably multiple times a week. And if you don't have depth, if you're top heavy, everyone gets excited by the Steve Cohen payroll, which brings in stars. But you've got to have depth, and ultimately the ball is in Dominic Leone's hands with the game on the line yesterday. And Dominic Leone is kind of probably a quadruple A pitcher at this point. And the Mets just have a lot of that. Length of lineup, length of rotation, length of bullpen issues. You could buy a lot for $360-ish million payroll, but they haven't bought the depth. And then also you have some star issues, notably Francisco Lindor at the plate.
Well, let's talk about that payroll because one guy that he brought in with that checkbook was Kodai Senga. He had his best start against the Phillies, but he only lasted 2 2/3 innings on Sunday, and that's off of 4 days rest, which he normally isn't used to. So I guess I'm going to ask you, is the Mets rotation, would you consider that an asset or a liability at this point? And should Amazins be worried?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is maybe. Like we saw Senga make his first start on normal MLB rest, and it did not go well. The Blue Jays clearly had a game plan of reading the ball out of his hands, and if they read not fastball, they were letting it go. They were not chasing the ghost fork. And he walked a lot of guys because of that in his short stint. I believe it was like 5 of the 17 batters he faced. That's an issue. The age of Scherzer and Verlander are issues, as is the, age on an injury history on Carlos Carrasco. Will they get Jose Quintana back to bring some left-handed stability? There's a good rotation in there. Can it perform up to its pedigree and can it stay healthy? If it can, it's the kind of unit that can help them run off 10 out of 12, 15 out of 20, 20 out of 27. And in the National League, if you could get 10 or 15 games over, you might not win the NL East, but the National League kind of stinks this year. And if you could get to 10, 15 games over, you're really in prime position to be one of the 6 playoff teams.
Well, last year, one of the assets on this team was the bats. I mean, this offense is now a liability. They're hitless they were hitless in 19 at-bats with runners in scoring position. They only scored 5 runs in the 3-game series against the Blue Jays. How does this team get out of this slump?
Well, a lot of this is like Starling Marte has begun to hit. Oftentimes, as Marte went last year, the team went. I would not be surprised to see him put back in the 2-hole for what's now an important June series against the Braves. The Mets don't want to lose further contact with first place in the division. If you remember, Atlanta is where their season went to die late last year in the penultimate series of the year. It was a showdown. They got swept. The homer bats of the Braves were much stronger than the power of the Mets, and they swept the Mets. The Mets have a homer deficiency problem. Their pitching staff gives up too many. Their offense doesn't hit enough. Somebody besides Pete Alonso's got to do that. Marte's 15 a year would help. Francisco Lindor getting, has hit home runs, but his average is way down. And he really looks like he's swinging an exhausted bat right now. Does he need this day off today, or does he need some multiple days off? I believe he's played every game. The league has learned a little bit about Beatty and Alvarez. They're both troubled. Will they adapt and change back and become effective hitters like they were earlier in their stints this year? Again, I would say it's a little bit like the rotation, Brandon. There are people there that can make this a good quality long lineup, but will they play to that ability? They haven't as a unit this year like they did especially early last year.
Well, they'll get a chance to play to that ability when they start their 3-game series against the Braves. That goes down Tuesday night. Joel, as always, appreciate you having coming on with us, my man.
Thanks, Brandon.